Morphemes can be defined as sequences of phonemes that hold meaning, and they can make up either all of a word or just part of a word. For example, the word happy is made up of one single morpheme and can stand on its own, and the word unhappy is made up of two separate morphemes.
Okay, so we have the perfect.
So there are two main kinds of morphemes, free morphemes and bound morphemes. Free morphemes can stand on their own, for example, the words dog and chair, and bound morphemes can only exist when they are part of a larger word, like the affixes on ed, re, and s. So morphemes can also be divided up into either roots and affixes. Roots contain the most lexical meaning of a word, so they're usually nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs, but they can also be bound, meaning they can't stand on their own. An example is the morpheme micro in the words microbiology and micropipette. So this word is a root because it holds the meaning of the word, but it's bound because it can't stand alone as only micro. Affixes, on the other hand, usually add grammatical meaning to words, and they are always bound, so they can never stand on their own. Every word has at least one root, but words can contain two or more roots, and these words are called compounds. An example of this is the word wheelchair or superhero.
The types of morphological languages are followed on a spectrum, with the most specific being analytical or isolating, following agglutinating, fusional, and then finally polysynthetic. When we talk about analytic, this usually refers to morphemes that are isolated, and it is very easy to tell one morpheme from another in a sentence, and the word order is normally fairly fixed. In agglutinating languages, morphemes are more loosely joined together, and it's easy to tell where one starts and one ends, similar to analytic. The only difference is only one meaning indicated per affix, which is more similar in the agglutinating languages. Fusional languages is where the morphemes start to get a little more complicated, where they are fused with the stem, and it's more difficult to tell where one starts and one stops. A single affix may be having different meanings in the same time. Polysynthetic is our final language, and the morphemes are complex words formed by combining several stems and affixes, many words, classes combined in a single form.
The two types of affixes are derivational and inflectional. With derivational affixes, they can both be prefixes and suffixes. In this case, normally the part of speech changes, creating a new word, but doesn't need to change part of speech. Examples of this are unwind, in this case the un is a derivational affix, rewrite, in this case the re is a derivational affix, and kindness, and in this case the ness is a derivational affix. The next affix is inflectional, and in English they can only be suffixes. In inflectional affixes, the part of speech does not change, and neither does the basic meaning. An example of this is walked. There are many inflectional affixes that should just... Here are examples of inflectional affixes, and they never change, so these can be easily memorized. They are s, ed, ing, en or ed, s, apostrophe s, er, or est. Ambiguous affixes are when forming can either be inflectional or derivational, and in this case they're always suffixes because inflectional always have to be suffixes, so therefore the ambiguous affixes also have to be always suffixes. Examples of these are ing, ed, en, and er. For example, the sentence, "The girl was eating an apple." This shows that ing is inflectional, whereas eating is fun, ing is derivational. Zero-derived morphemes are when the part of speech changes but the form remains the same. Examples of this are Google and to Google. Most of the times this occurs when a new word is created or like a new website such as Google is created.
Form and meaning are the two ways that morphemes are defined. A morpheme can have the same form but two different meanings, which makes them two separate morphemes. An example of this is the word may. May can be a verb by saying you may do this or may I do that. It can also be used to refer to the month of May when saying today is May 2nd. These are two separate morphemes. It is also possible that one morpheme has two allomorphs. This tree shows how words are divided into morphemes. For the word indescribable, this tree shows its root, two affixes, and how they combine to make the whole
Ambiguous words are when there are two possible ways to build a word. For example, undoable. You can undo something, or something can be doable. Therefore, it could be unattached to doable, or you can attach.
Morphemes can have the same meaning across a multitude of words. An example of this is ing. When you say the word walking, talking, and singing, it signifies the same meaning of present participle, but they are different words. When looking for recurring sequences, make sure to note that order and meanings of morphemes can differ between languages. A morpheme may not be exact in the form, and an example of this would be the common alloforms that we learned about earlier in the semester. They can contain the same form or sequence of phonemes, which can show that they're sharing part of the meaning and not necessarily the entire word. The first morphological process is affixation. Another one is compounding, which would be an example of ladybug and quicksand. Ladybug is two separate words, lady and bug, put together to form a different meaning. Reduplication, the root or the stem of the word is repeated, and a common use of this would be for intensity. It's not necessarily found typically in the English language, but in other languages is prevalent. Alternations is an example. Internal modifications, an example of this would be ding-dong. And the last one is suppletion, where there are irregular forms of words found between different forms. So this would be like go and when in the same verb. Okay, great. 3,